I call on Government Orders of the Day number 3 to 5.
Housing Accords and Special Housing Areas Bill Committee Stage, Family Court Proceedings Reform Bill Committee Stage, Airports Cost Recovery for Processing of International Travellers Bill Committee Stage continue.
I declare that the House in committee for the consideration of the Housing Accords and Special Housing Areas Bill and the Family Courts Proceedings Reform Bill, and for further consideration of the Airports Cost Recovery for Processing of International Travellers Bill. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker. Honourable members, the House is in committee. Kia ora tātou no reira te whare, inga iwi, inga rio, inga hawe wha, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Members, we are in committee and we are considering the Housing Accords and Special Housing Areas Bill. We're also considering the Family Court Proceedings Reform Bill, and we're doing further consideration of the Airports Cost Recovery for Processing of International Travellers Bill. The question before the committee is that Part 1 stand part. That is a debate on clauses 3 to 19 and includes Schedule 1. I'm looking for someone to seek the call. I call the Honourable Member Philip Twyford.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Chairman.
Tēnā koutou.
The Housing Accords and Special Areas Bill, Mr. Chairman. Let me make some opening comments as we set off on Part 1 of this bill, Mr. Chairman. I want to make it very clear from the beginning that Labor supports the notion of housing accords. We support the idea of special housing areas. There is a housing affordability crisis, not only in Auckland but in many of our other bigger cities, particularly the high growth parts of the country. It's a crisis that is having huge economic and social effects on the people of New Zealand. Right. The Kiwi dream of home ownership is slipping further and further out of reach under this government. A generation of New Zealanders find it now nigh on impossible to purchase their own home. A generation ago, that was considered to be part of the Kiwi birthright. And now the numbers that we treasured for so long, we're so proud of, the very high rates of home ownership, are plummeting. And the last 5 years we have seen precious little action or seriousness by this government in addressing that problem. As well as the dream of home ownership slipping further out of reach, the housing crisis has had a massive negative effect on the well-being, the health and well-being of the poorest and most vulnerable New Zealanders, who are in huge numbers driven into the private rental market, where they live more often than not, crowded into substandard housing. It's not uncommon, Mr. Chairman, particularly in the centres where housing is at its most unaffordable, for families to be living cheek by jowl, squashed into the spare rooms of their friends and neighbours and relations, for people to be living in caravan parks in a quality of accommodation that no one in this country, in this day and age, should have to inhabit. Children, too many of them, being hospitalised for preventable respiratory diseases because they're living in cold and damp homes. And a major factor for that relative social hardship, Mr. Chairman, is an overall housing crisis which has driven prices up beyond the reach of ordinary Kiwis, that has denied so many people a shot at home ownership, and has had the knock-on effect of pushing New Zealanders further and further down the chain to face often substandard, inadequate housing. and it is high time that the government did something serious about this housing crisis. But I'm sorry to say, Mr Chairman, that this bill, this Housing Accords and Special Areas Bill, does not measure up to any kind of benchmark for a serious, concerted, well thought through response to the housing crisis. What it is, Mr Chairman, is the fast tracking of elements of the Auckland Unitary Plan that will bring in more greenfields land than would otherwise be the case, and some fast-track consenting to deliver special areas, special housing areas. Now, as I said, Mr Chairman, Labor's not against the idea. There is a housing crisis. There is in Auckland, because of the historical legacy of the old metropolitan urban limits, which are now about to be replaced by the rural-urban boundary in Auckland's unitary plan. There is a land supply problem in Auckland that has been responsible for driving up land prices and as a knock-on effect, driving up residential property prices. And this bill is premised on the notion that if you open up extra greenfields land, that somehow it will magically flow through into affordability. And in the course of this debate, Mr Chairman, we will unpick that shonky thinking and poor logic that underpins this bill. Because as my colleague Jacinda Ardern commented in Select Committee when the Honourable Nick Smith came along as part of the estimates and was quizzed about his housing policies, and the Minister explained his thinking that underpins this bill. And it is essentially that, Mr Chairman.
Mr Chairman.
Mr Chairman.
I call the Honourable Minister Nick Smith.
Mr Chairman, let's firstly get on the record.